Rolling Dice and Taking Names is sponsored by The Broken Token, creator of high-quality gaming accessories and storage solutions. Visit them online at thebrokentoken.com.
Hey y'all, it's time for Rolling Dice and Taking Names. While the other guy is on another vacation, Marty has a surprise co-host and guest to help him review Seventh Continent, Codenames Duet, Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time, and Shadespire. Hey, what was that other guy's name again?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rolling Dice and Taking Names. This is episode 128, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. My name is Marty, and my regular co-host, Tony, is on vacation somewhere. He just kind of up and left and said, I'm leaving 128 in your hands. I kind of freaked out a little bit, but I was lucky enough to be able to reach out to a good friend of mine who said that he would come on the show. And you may know this guy. My co-host for this show is an actor who's been in many movies and TV shows. He's also the host of the radio show Cardboard, and it's the one man in Hollywood who actually prefers board games to Botox. My friend, Rich Sommer.
Hello, Marty. How are you?
Rich, I'm not doing too good because I'm just going full disclosure here. Rich and I just talked for about 8 minutes.
Yep.
Just having a great discussion.
Yep.
And Marty, here, see, I'm nervous, Rich. I mean, here you are. You're a professional actor on the show. I'm trying to be professional.
Uh-huh.
If I would have pressed the record button, it would have been awesome because there was some really good banter that will never be heard.
Spontaneous sort of, really catching up with each other, getting down to the nitty gritty and fast. And really, I feel like it was a spark that we will never recapture.
Oh, okay.
I know this is episode 128, including do-overs. How many episodes have you done, do you think?
264.
That sounds right.
One thing I did bring up in the in the Lost Tapes edition of RDTN, I was reading Rich's IMDb page, and I'm a huge fan of the cartoon that was on Cartoon Network called The Regular Show. And Rich, I didn't realize that you were did some voiceover work or some voice acting for that show. And you had a really good anecdote that you told me about when the recorder was not recording, mm-hmm. of how you got that gig.
Mm-hmm. And for if you contribute to our Patreon, you can hear that anecdote again right here. No, it basically was that I had gotten into a Twitter exchange with someone over board games, and it turned out that he was a writer for the regular show. And I just sort of, after we had been chatting for a while, I did not intend for this to actually happen, but I just sort of flippantly said, can I be on your show? And he said, sure. And little did I know that would turn into several episodes. I think I did maybe 7 or 8 of the regular show. And then that show ended. And the creator of that show, J.G. Quintel, has started another show called Close Enough on TBS. And I've gotten to do a few episodes of that one. And so it really just, it was just out of a Twitter exchange about board games. See, board games, now I can write them all off on my taxes.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, and if you've never watched the regular show, I highly recommend it. It's ended, but it went for, several seasons. And it is one of those that I consider it's a cartoon, but it's very highbrow humor. It's odd, it's bizarre, but myself and my sons absolutely love that show. So I'm glad to see that he's doing something else. And what's also really cool is on that show, Mark Hamill played a character on that show. And you said that you actually ran into him one day going in to do some work.
Yeah, I think it was maybe my first or second session with regular show. I showed up a few minutes early, and Mark Hamill was just finishing up his session. And I got to watch him work for a little while. And then when he was cleaning up and I was being brought in to kind of set my microphone height and level and everything, he introduced himself, and he was nothing but kind. And it turned out that he and his family watched another show I had done, Mad Men. And it was one of the most surreal feelings in the world. Having Mark Hamill know my work was something I don't think I expected to have happen anytime in my life.
Did you get a selfie at least?
I did not. I'm not good at getting those selfies just because I feel I don't know. I feel so strange asking for them. I sometimes, if it's someone my kids are really into, I'll ask for a selfie because I really want nothing more than to impress them. But normally I just skip that part.
Your kids aren't into Star Wars?
They're only now just getting into Star Wars. They watched Force, my son, who is lovely, still calls it Star Wars Force of Weekends. So we just watched Force of Weekends a couple of weekends ago, and then we started New Hope. So they're just barely breaking into it, but they've seen 2 of the Mark Hamill Star Wars movies now, so it's a good start.
And you're showing them in the order, skipping 1, 2, and 3. Well done, sir.
Yes, of course.
Hey, by the way, I know that I know this little bit of a tidbit about you, and it just really irritates me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Today, on September 20th, is the 15th anniversary of the premiere of Firefly, which I think last time I talked, you had never seen.
That's correct. And upon this time, I have good news for you, Marty. I still have never seen it.
Dude, it's only 13 episodes. Just invest 13 episodes.
I know, but everything is only 13 episodes. There's some actual amazing television out there in 13 episodes. I'm sure Firefly's one of them, but there are other shows.
You make me sad.
I didn't grow up a sci-fi guy. And it's been a slow come around for me. And in fact, funny enough, one of the things that brought me around to sci-fi at all, to even having a glancing interest in it, was that, and well, I was sent a copy of Summoner Wars by Plaid Hat Games back in maybe 2000, I want to say, 10, something like that. And they, Colby Dauch, I never can remember how to say his full last name, but wrote me a note, and I wrote him back and said, listen, I appreciate this game. I just have to let you know, fantasy, it's not really sci-fi, but fantasy theme doesn't really grab me. It's not something I usually like. And he said, listen, I stand by this game. I think if you take it for a spin, you'll like it. And I did, and he totally proved me wrong. And it opened me up. I just sort of was a little bit prejudiced against certain themes, both in movies and games and TV shows, and those were sci-fi and fantasy. It just wasn't where I landed, and so I have Plaid Hat Games and Summoner Wars to thank for opening my eyes to the possibility that something could be good that I didn't think could be. So yes, I'll watch Firefly someday. Good heavens.
All you had to do is just say yes or no. I mean,
I have a tendency to go off on tangents, Marty.
Hey, I don't know if you know this. Okay, actually, I know you do because we talked about it when it wasn't being recorded, but I'm going to say it again. You are only the second person to ever co-host the show with me. Typically, when Tony has gone out on vacation, I've had Rodney Smith from Watch It Played sit in on that seat. And I would say that you have big shoes to fill, but yeah, it was Rodney.
I don't know why you're so mean to Rodney all the time, Marty.
Me?
I said this in the first time we recorded this. You need to stop picking on Rodney.
Lord. You need to get on your knees and ask for forgiveness.
I was very clear. I said I feel bad for all of the things that I've ever said that you seem to believe were me making fun of Rodney. That was never my intention. And I just, it's hard to watch someone who is clearly a fundamentally good man being brought down by someone, by the likes of you.
Gosh, I cannot believe this is actually going to be on air. Holy cow, your nose. I don't even know how you could deal with the length of your nose right now.
Listen, I just calls them like I sees them, Marty.
No, in all honesty, Rodney is a great guy. It's just that Rich and I just kind of joke and jab with each other, and it really kind of all goes back to that the video game or that app that we played, Subterfuge, from like a year and a half ago, where I saw a side of Rodney that I did not know existed.
You saw not only a side of Rodney, but of almost everyone in that game. The Subterfuge, for those who haven't played it, it's an app-based game that happens sort of kind of in real time, right? It happens over the course of days. It's almost like diplomacy but way more going on and takes a lot longer. But it is a lot about deal making and then deal breaking and backstabbing. And yes, our friend Rodney Smith, well, he just had no problems winning. I once played a game of Intrigue. I don't know if you've ever played that one, Stefan Dora game from a number of years ago. And I did a move on one of my best friends, and his response was, guess someone wants to win. And that is how I feel about Rodney Smith in that game of Subterfuge.
You talked about everybody acted a little bit different. The only people that I think that kind of acted somewhat normal was maybe you, me. Jeff Engelstein won, so that's pretty normal.
Yes.
The other person that was kind of out there was Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise.
And that, as I've said a number of times, was my first introduction to Chaz. As far as like us interacting one-on-one, I had certainly seen him online. Oh yeah, Chaz took on a, shall we say, a persona during that game?
Yeah, and I don't even know what I mean, I was like, I couldn't tell, are you kidding? Are you not kidding? It was just a bizarre sort of game that it took us, I don't know how many weeks for us to finish. I know that once we were all done, we said, uninstall, never play again.
Oh, never again. Listen, it was a truly incredible game experience. But I have a wife and children, and I try to have jobs. I can't go into that again. It was all consuming.
One of the things that I was going to talk to you about, you got your show Cardboard with Rich Sommer, which is kind of like your radio show. Now I know that you've been in the process of moving and you've been on hiatus for a while, and I was going to talk about when you're going to come back on all this, but the day before this, you actually recorded an episode. So just let me go to my show notes and scribble that part out right there so we won't talk about that. And then I was going to talk to you, with Halloween coming up, I was going to talk to you about like the Arkham Horror card game, because you and I played it last year at BGG Con. But just so happens one of your callers called up and you talked about that too. So let me scratch that out.
Two of
your callers. That's right. Scratch that out. And this episode is called Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, because we're doing a segment with my good friends Nate and Mark. We're going to be talking about the seventh continent. But it just so happened that Scott Alden from BGG called you up and y'all talked about seventh continent. So let me mark that part out too. So, Rich, thanks for coming on. Where can we find you?
Wow. I really appreciate this show just being a mere supplement to my show yesterday. No, look, I'm going to still touch on some of these topics you brought up. One is that you were going to ask when my show was going to come back. And the reason I think you were going to ask that is that when I moved July 1, I stopped recording for a while. Obviously we moved. That was traumatic. And then immediately after we moved, I went to Vancouver to shoot a movie for 5 weeks. So I was gone for another stretch of time. And then when I came home, I still had to unpack because I had not unpacked before I left. My lovely wife, thank heavens, had done inside the house, but I still had the entire office to unpack, all the games and all of my podcasting equipment. So I finally did all that. And literally yesterday took the computer out of a box and plugged it in and truly just flipped on the switch to see if it would work in this new configuration. And it turned into a show. I didn't really expect it to become the first episode after a while, but then it ended up being that. So anyway, I'm sorry to beat you to the punch. But the answer is I'll be doing it whenever, just like always, whenever I feel like it.
It was just so funny as I was listening to it. I'm going, okay, well, there's Arkham Horror crap, Seventh Continent crap. Oh, and there's one more. So before Tony left, we do have a couple of pre-recorded segments with Tony. One, he and I talk about the new Passport Games game, Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time. But plus, we also do a 5-minute initiative on Codenames Duet, which is going to talk to you about. But you talked about it on your show also. But you are enjoying that game, I believe, right?
I love that game. I also love that you presume that every single one of your listeners already heard my show when I think I have about a 17th of the listenership that you have, but I appreciate it. Yes, Codenames Duets has been easily my most played game of the year. I have been playing it non-stop. And I only have had it. I mean, you and Rodney were kind enough to get a copy for me at Gen Con and sent it my way. So I played a handful of times at Origins, and then I've just been playing nonstop. I've taken it out of town. I played it in Washington, D.C. with a friend. I have been playing it here. I have it in a little travel bag because it breaks down to much smaller than the box. And I just take it with me because it's so easy to play at a diner or wherever. So I am loving that game. Have you tried the quote unquote campaign that's in there?
I have not.
I don't really see the point. I mean, it's cute. For those of you that don't know, there's a map in there that has sort of places you can go, and it changes how many clues you're allowed to give or how many incorrect answers you're allowed to have in each game. And that's really all it changes. There's not actually, from what I could figure out, a stated goal. Like, I don't think you win the campaign. You just kind of do it. I don't know. It was very confusing to me. I don't think I'll be chasing the campaign much, but as far as a game that you can sit down, play with 2 players, the versatility of it, we've thrown in the picture cards from Codenames Pictures. The fact that you can teach it to anyone. My wife Virginia has shown interest, which is extremely rare because she likes Codenames. I'm really excited about this game.
Percentage wise, how often do you think you win?
20%, 25%, maybe. I mean, we've gotten better. I've gotten better.
Have you found that if you know the person better, that it's easier to win?
Definitely, 100%. And and sometimes just like in Codenames, you're going to look at that code card, and you're going to go, oh, well, there's just not a way for me to tie these together. So it's not a perfect science, but man, sometimes when you really think on it for a second and you get that humdinger of a clue, it is a satisfying experience.
I would tell you my thoughts on it, but you'll just have to fast forward and listen to my little 5-minute spiel. Otherwise, I'll just be repeating myself. But anyway, those segments are coming up again, along with our discussion on Seventh Continent. I heard Scott Alden from BGG on your show. Really, he was raving.
He is
a lot
loving it.
About that game. I mean, he said on your show that right now it may be his game of the year.
Yeah, he was pretty clear about that, and he's put in the time too. I mean, he said something like 30 plus hours over 2 weekends on that game. I mean, it sounds amazing, and I'm eager to hear your guys' take on it. It's so much game. I don't know that it fits my style, but it does sound pretty amazing.
It is one of those games that once we got going, and we played a 6-hour session this past weekend. Wow. And it's one of those games that you go, and then all of a sudden, it's been 6 hours. Yeah. It just kind of just moves like that. So yeah, I can understand if you don't have a lot of time, this is probably not the best game for you, but it's definitely one of those campaign legacy style games that if you're going to play, you got to commit to it, much like Pandemic Legacy Season 1 or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. I just, I don't know. Have you cracked into First Martians yet?
I have cracked into it, and that's as far as I've gotten. I've not gotten a group to play. I need to. It's funny. The rules intimidate me. Oh yeah. And Rodney's video intimidates me because that sucker's at an hour long for a video.
Yeah, it's 53 or 55 minutes long. And that is the expedited rules explanation. I have to tell you though, I remember Rodney telling me when he made the video, if you try to learn this game, read the rules and watch the video, and you'll be pretty well set. I read the rules. I watched the video. I have 5 trillion questions. It is a monster of a rule engine. However, that said, it's like any of those. It's like Robinson Crusoe. It's like while it's brutal and it just beats you down into the dirt, you do start to kind of see where there might be a crack of daylight. It starts to hum along a little bit. It's broken down. Every scenario is broken down into souls or, solar days on Mars. And right around in each of the scenarios I played, I've now played 3 scenarios. The right around Sol 3 or 4, you go, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Here it goes. Here we go. And you get the engine going just a little too late. But it is, and the setup and the takedown is also arduous. But it is quite a game. I'm really, really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm ready to jump into it. In fact, today, September 20th, is Ignacy and Portal just started doing their early release event. They've given an update to the app today. There's a new scenario coming out. He's released a video about First Martian. So if you have more interest in that, please go check out the website at portalgames.pl. There, he's doing this whole pre-release event. The updated app's supposed to include some extra things like maybe some help. And I know he was very concerned about, the time it took to learn the game and everything. So he's trying to do everything that he can to try to give good tutorials in the app, try to give rule books in the app. He was out there online answering questions. He talked about this in our last episode when we interviewed him. He said, he was on Reddit and BGG just answering questions as fast as he could. But it was funny. He said, over time, he realized he was answering them too quick because he said a lot of the answers were in the rule book. So he said, after a while, he said, I just kind of waited. And then somebody usually would step in and answer the question for him. But anyway, he wants to make sure that people enjoy this game as much as possible. And he's there as a support for us that are learning it.
I think that one of the most important things to come out of this early release day today is that they're putting an improved rules almanac in the app. And I think that is probably the most vital piece of information to come out of today. Because I have found when I'm searching for a rule, while there is an index in the rule book, it's not exactly comprehensive. So sometimes you have to kind of think, well, what heading might this rule be under? And sometimes it's not in the index. Some of the questions we had specifically about how the, player counts, setting the game up for different numbers of players. It's in there, but it's buried a bit. So I do appreciate, I know how much work Ignacy's put into this game. He told me about this game, I think, gosh, it feels like maybe a year and a half ago or more. And I know he has really been pouring his heart and soul into this thing. I know it's going to find its footing, but like anything, we early adopters just have to sort of struggle through some of the rules questions. And then eventually it's going to be much easier. If you give this a couple months, it's going to be a much simpler endeavor to learn this game, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another reason why, too, I love his release schedule. His next game that's coming out is Alien Artifacts, which is more of a simple card deck building game, which is kind of not deck building, engine building game, which is kind of his thing. So it's really cool. He's coming out. Okay, here's this big box experience, and then here's like an hour card game. So he's not like hitting us over the head, because his next game after that's that detective game, which sounds like it's a pretty involved game.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think he's got a good sine wave happening. The peaks and the valleys of complexity. He's got them measured out pretty well.
This past Sunday was the Emmys. And there's this anecdote. I don't know if you saw this. Now, you are a Mad Men and everything. You attended the Emmys, right?
Yeah, we went a few times.
I don't know if you happen to see this. Sophia Vergara. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Sophia. I mispronounced that. I know you're listening.
I know she's tuning in today.
She's from, right now, she's currently on Modern Family. So when she was on the red carpet, somebody asked her husband is Joe, I'm going to screw this up too, Manganiello?
That one I don't know.
Okay. Who was on True Blood and then Magic Mike.
Right.
Yeah, do you know who I'm talking about, by the way?
I know who you're talking about now. I don't know how to say his name either.
Okay, we here around the house, we just say Joe Melliello, and we know who we're talking about.
I'm sure he appreciates that.
Well, Joe, I'm sorry. Sophia, tell Joe I'm sorry. So they asked him, he said, tell us a secret about Joe that nobody knows. And they said he is like the biggest nerd in the world. They said his highlight, this is her speaking, the highlight of his life is to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Ah.
And he said that he gets like 8 of his friends together, and I'm quoting, I do like a spread of food. He has a dungeon room downstairs in our basement. It's spectacular. I decorated it for him. I bring him food, and he sits there for like 6 or 8 hours playing D&D.
Wow.
That is really, really cool. And I was telling my wife about it. My wife, who loves it when I bring friends over and stuff, and she'll bring down the snacks and everything like that. I said, I just can't picture Sophia coming down the stairs and like, here, have some Chex Mix, fellas, and I'm going to be back upstairs.
You know, this is funny. I once, when my podcast first started a few years ago, I interviewed a gentleman named David Bakhtiari, who is a football player for the Green Bay Packers. And it had just...
The offensive lineman.
That's right. It had just come out at that time that the Packers really loved playing Settlers of Catan. And I sort of posited a question to David along the lines of, it was something like, I don't know if it was even a question. I think it was just a noticing, man, it's just, fun to hear that you guys are doing this. And he sort of bristled a little bit. And he said, why is that so fun? Like, why is this so interesting to you, basically? And I said, well, I don't know. I think we find it interesting. I think people find it interesting because it's fun to relate to you on a different level. We're used to watching you out there playing football. We know that's something most of us can't do. We know that we're either too old or we could never move like that. We didn't have the skills. We just weren't athletic. It wasn't something I could ever do. But to know that after you're done doing that, you often go and do the thing that I do, sit with your friends and play a board game. I don't know. I just found that so exciting. I just always think it's interesting how, because I have the same reaction you do when someone like Sofia Vergara is talking about how her husband plays D&D and she decorated the dungeon room and everything. Why is that such tantalizing information to me? I don't know why it is, but I still get sort of revved up about that. I think it's exciting.
Well, I think, like you said, it's relatable. For some reason, you picture athletes or, somebody like that just in their own world, and there's no intersection between their world and our world at all. And when you hear that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the intersection is this little hobby that we enjoy, it's just like an instant connection. It's like, I don't know Joe. He doesn't know me, but I feel like I could just go up to him and say, hey, what kind of character are you playing in D&D? I've got like an icebreaker at this point.
Yeah, well, and you could also open with you call him Joe Mellow Yellow, and then go to the D&D thing. He'd love that.
Yeah, that guy's a really big dude and very buff. No, thank you, because he would pummel me. But that's the other thing too. The guy was like Magic Mike is like a stripper dancer. He's a hulk of a man, and just like, yeah, I'm just really a geekaholic that likes to play D&D. And in fact, he is trying to get a Dungeons and Dragons movie underway.
Really?
Yep. Wow. He is so into it. He is trying to work to get that to the big screen, because he said he's never felt the property's been treated correctly. So he'd like to have something done with it that's done well.
The only Dungeons and Dragons interaction I can recall ever having is because it's the theme of the game Lords of Waterdeep. Otherwise, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I've never even stuck my toe into the theme. Like I said earlier, it just wasn't my thing for the longest time. But I've really come around on the whole fantasy thing. And I think it was, again, things like Summoner Wars, the Lord of the Rings movies, things like that sort of slowly started to draw me in. So it is something I'd be up for a Dungeons and Dragons movie. Why not, if it's good?
Well, you never know. You talked about at the beginning of the recording how you just started interacting with somebody, end up with the job. Maybe you go to Joe and start talking about D&D, and maybe start playing D&D with him, and he'll offer you a part in the next Magic Mike 3.
Well, you've seen me in person, Marty. You know how stunning my pectoral muscles are.
Rich, I've seen more than I want to see, but that's another topic. Oh wow! No, I just think it's really cool to be able to relate to somebody like that and everything. And shoot, when I first found out that this show that I watched called Mad Men had this one actor on there that brought board games to play on the set, I just immediately kind of related to you. It's like, hey, I want to know and be friends with that guy. Who the heck would have thought that here in 2017 I'd be chatting with him online? I mean, that's freaking cool.
Well, see, there you go. Now give it another couple of years, and you and Joe Mellow Yellow can kick Tony out, and it'll be the show it was always meant to be. I hear Joe loves moon pies.
Yeah, no, that guy looks like he's never had a moon pie in his life as fit as he is. Speaking of which, you mentioned Lords of Waterdeep, which you, Rodney, I, and another good friend of ours, Dave Finkel, have been playing, and that is a really good adaptation of that game for the phone and Steam. The UI and everything just works so well. Asmodee Digital, I think, is now distributed. It used to be from Playdeck, but they've done such a fantastic job on that game.
There was a recent update right before we started playing, at least for the iOS version, because I've been playing on my phone or iPad, that completely enhanced the experience. It was always a pretty good app, but they put out an update really pretty recently, only a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that completely changed it. It changed the orientation of it, first of all, so you have to hold the thing sideways. But there's so much more of the map on the screen. There's so much more you can do from that main screen without having to sort of go to sub-menus and things. It's really slick. And it was always good, but it's even better now.
Yeah, and they came out with a Steam version, and I love the cross-platform capability because, Rich, when you get into your 40s and stuff and late 40s, the eyes just start going, and trying to play a game on a little 5-inch screen, I'd much rather sit here and look at this 27-inch monitor to play Lords of Waterdeep. And thankfully, because of the cross-platform capability, I mean, you guys may be playing on the iOS or whatever, and I'm playing on Windows, and it's great.
Well, Marty, I'm going to be 40 in February, and I fully imagine that I'll wake up on February 2nd and not be able to see my phone. So I think that's how it works, right?
It's actually not far from that. I remember pretty soon after I turned 40 going to the eye doctor, and they do the little test. It's like, yeah, you're not able to read as close as what you used to. Get out of here. And it was like, yeah, I guess he's right. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and get into the rest of the show. We've got some reviews coming up. Like I said, we're going to be talking about Seventh Continent here. We're going to be talking about Codenames Duet that we pre-recorded with Tony, and also Professor Evil and the Citadel of Time. And Rich will catch you back at the end of this.
See you then.
If you happen to miss the pre-order for First Martian, well, it's about to hit retailers. That is right, First Martian is out and ready for you and your team to go and take on this uninhabitable planet. You don't need to terraform, just survive like you did on the island with Robinson Crusoe. And don't forget, 51st State Expansions is in stores, and if you haven't discovered Neuroshima Hex yet, do yourself a favor. It's a really fun game. Go check that out too. You can check out this and all these other games at portalgames.pl.
Hot games at Gen Con, Professor Evil, and the Citadel Time by Passport Games. It was flying off the shelves.
It was. This game, which is they brought to us from FunForge, designer by Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert, has come out with this co-op game with a really cool theme where you're basically trying to break into this Professor Evil's house. Now, he's evil. So I assume that
he's misunderstood.
Is not a bad thing.
He's misunderstood. He's not evil.
Well, yeah, but you're breaking into his house and you're trying to steal his loot. Now, typically that doesn't sound like a very nice thing, but again, because his name is Professor Evil, I will assume that stealing his loot is okay in this situation.
Well, he's a historian, and he's trying to save priceless treasures by going back in time and bringing them forward, but he's robbing other people. So I guess we're the evil ones if you want to really twist it around. We're trying to steal his stuff, but he's got all these traps in his house.
Yeah, he does. And so the thing is, though, in order to get to these treasures or loot, you got to turn off these traps and do so. There's basically there's switches around the house that you got to go through and flip off. So you break into the house. The board game is made up of basically a map of Professor Evil's lair or mansion or whatever like that. And you move in and you can move between rooms. Tony, when I first looked at it, somebody else said it almost looks like the Clue board, right?
Yes.
Because there's a ballroom and a dining room. And at the beginning of the game, the loot is set around on the board, and there's 3 loot that's set out. And right in the middle, there's this big analog clock, and that's kind of the main mechanic of the game. There's a token associated with the loot that goes on one of the numbers of the clock. And each turn, the professor may move around the dial of the clock. If he ever gets on the part of the clock that has a loot token, he captures that loot. So the goal of the game is he's trying to capture 4 pieces of loot. Your group is trying to capture 4 pieces of loot, and whoever does that first basically is the winner. It's either Professor Evil, or it's going to be you and the rest of your team.
As the people trying to rescue these treasures, fine, I'll make them good guys for now. You have the ability to do 3 actions, plus you have a special power, and you have a deck of cards that you're going to flip over 2 of these cards. Now, Marty, the 3 actions, you can open a door, You can turn off a switch, right? I mean, because you gotta get it ready, because the treasure is protected by, like you said, these various switches, and you got to turn them off. They're spread out all over the stuff. If a treasure is no longer protected, you can grab the treasure, and after you perform 3 actions, or while you're performing your 3 actions, you can do one of these special cards. Now, I was playing the gambler, Marty, and my cards were like, you can roll the dice again, or you can try to roll the dice and get a special effect. So you can do these actions, but when you flip these cards over as a player, you discuss among the group which one will be best beneficial during your turn. And now there's 12 of these cards, and you get 2 at the beginning of each of your turns. So they help add to the actions you're taking. That's kind of a neat mechanic that I enjoy as a player. Also, I mean, when the clock goes past the 15 and the 45, the players may flip over their character card, and you get an ongoing effect or a very one-time special effect that can go in. But only one player gets to choose that. And we kept going to Mark Kale, who was playing with us from the Scurry report. We kept choosing him because he could ignore Professor Evil. So that's also an action that you can do. So you've got all this co-op going on with which action should I take? How should I move throughout the house? You're working together as a team. Which person should use their special action? All that is going into how you're trying to defeat Professor Evil. Now, Marty, one of my favorite aspects of this game was Professor Evil. Now, you talked about him going around the clock picking up the treasure, but he also is in the room. He's kind of absent-minded. He doesn't remember things very well. After you finish your turn, Professor Evil moves. To move him, you roll 3 dice. 1 die advances the clock counter clockwise. Imagine that. You could really screw that up, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could.
So you got to move it forward on the board, and that helps him capture. It's either going to move 5 minutes or 10 minutes. The other 2 determine whether Professor Evil moves or how far he moves. What's more, as he walks through the rooms, he's absent-minded. He'll go, hey, I thought I locked this door. And he will, once he goes through it, he locks the door behind him. Or when he walks into a room, if a mechanism or a trap has been deactivated, he goes, I could have sworn I had that activated. And he reactivates it. So he's constantly foiling our plans. And that's one of the mechanisms I really enjoyed about this game, is how it was random on how he moved. Now, that may upset some people that they don't know what the dice determine how he moves. It could really frustrate you. And we had some of that. We had some of that frustration in this game.
Well, I think that's part of the randomness you have to have in this game, because at its core, if you kind of pull the theme away from it, this is a puzzle game.
Yeah.
The idea is that each of these treasures says, okay, this treasure is protected by this color switch or this color switch. And there's multiple colors of those switches on the board. So let's say, for example, there's 2 yellow switches, 2 red switches. That means you must have people move throughout the house, find those 4 switches, flip them off. Then somebody has to get to that room where that loot is in order to pick it up while those switches are off. So there's the puzzly part, but the randomness has to be there because the professor, as you said, is moving through the house, and you may have deactivated a red switch over here. It just so happens you roll the dice. He moves back into that room, and he'll turn that switch back on. That's great. Now you can't pick up that loot. So I think you got to have that as part of the puzzle aspect. Otherwise, it would just be a straightforward puzzle game and kind of boring. It's just how fast can we do it? This does add some randomness, but also adds the frustration and actually some pretty interesting moments, because it's like, please don't let him move into this room. It's like, crap, he just moved to that room and flipped that switch. Now we got to figure out how to get back over there. And if he ever ends up in the same room with you, he kicks you out of the house. It's like, get out of my house. And so you're back on the outside of the house and you got to crawl back in through a window. On your turn, you can do a move, and one of them is crawl into a window of a room in order to get back in. So this is constantly going on over the course of the game. And like you said, Tony, everybody has their own special abilities. So there's these variable player powers that I really enjoy, because that makes you kind of have to work together. And like I said, the clock mechanic is really cool, because my ability was I can mess with time. So that black pawn that's on the clock, as it moves clockwise around the clock closer to where your tokens are on that clock, it's like, great. We got to make sure that black token doesn't end up on our loot tokens on that clock. My ability was to be able to shift those tokens forward clockwise. So I wanted as much distance as possible between those loot tokens on the clock and the black pawn on the clock. But sometimes something would happen in the game that would pull those loot tokens back towards the black token, which shortened the amount of time that we had to get it. Again, another cool aspect. Let's say he's only the black pawn's only 10 minutes away from touching the green token and getting rid of the green loot. That forces us as a team as fast as possible to try to go get that green loot before he does.
but it frustrated me to no end that it seemed like he was constantly sitting in a room where our treasures, we couldn't get to them. And I was like, come on, professor, move. And the dice would roll and he wasn't moving. You know, it was the opposite effect of him moving. It was, oh, he's going to teleport to this treasure that we were fixing to capture. But I was like, it just seemed like, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think I am, that he was always.
Oh, you probably are.
No, I'm not. No, because we were sitting there. We've got to get to that stupid green switch. We had them all off, and he was constantly going back and forth between that room. And it was just like, oh, man. And we couldn't get there. We could not move into that room because if he did, like you said, he'd kick us out and reactivate that stupid switch. And now you're having to waste your moves because you're limited. You only got 3 moves. And it was,
that was one of my things. That's one of my abilities, right? I could have said, take one of the treasure tokens and move it counterclockwise on the clock, but it would give me 2 additional actions. So it's one of those things that, well, if I move that 2 spots, maybe I can go pick up that loot. It does seem he was just hanging around areas that it seemed like we always needed to be. I do like the way that the professor moves through the mansion. It's really straightforward. You roll a die and it says move the professor a certain number of spaces. And then there's a color die that says like move green, red, or blue. And each room is marked by an exit with a certain color. And basically, if he's in a room and it says move 3 spaces blue, you move him through the blue door, and the next room you move him through the next blue door, etc. So it's very easy to move him. And like Tony, like you said, if he happens to move through a door that was open, he turns around and closes it as he leaves. It's like, oh, there's one extra action we have to do in order to get in that room.
Yeah. And reactivate that switch. Urgh. Now they have. What's neat is you can start out with the easy mode, and like idiots, we did not. We started with the, we're advanced game players. We can play this in the hard mode where you put the big, what seemed it was kind of, we were like, why is this the hard mode? Where you have the ones that are 55 minutes away from the start of the clock. We were like, okay, this doesn't seem, but it was because you had to deactivate 3 sets of the traps versus the easier ones, we only had to do 2 sets of the traps.
Right. And the really difficult loot was only 30 minutes away from the black pawn. So when a piece of loot is picked up, there's some decks of cards where you flip over a deck that has a name of a room, and then you pick up a face down loot. And the loot will tell you how many minutes away from where the black pawn is that you should place the loot token on the clock. So say, for example, it's 45 minutes. So you move around the board. So you have 45 minutes where the black token is now in order to find that. And then the other card tells you what room to place it in. That mechanically was pretty cool too. So for me, the biggest highlight was that whole time mechanic. Yeah. I thought that was just really neat how the loot tokens sit on the clock. You see how much time you have in order to go grab that loot. And then that black token that moves basically on the professor's turn just shows it's like a ticking clock. I got to hurry up and go get that. That was neat to me. Also, the production of this game is out of this world. For an easier, a simpler co-op game to learn, sometimes companies will take the easy path and just throw a cheap board out there with some simple stuff and not great art. This is a really nice board. This is, to me, Restoration Games has like top-notch production, right? Their boards are super thick. To me, that's what this reminded me of. A real thick cardboard board, some really nice tokens. The dies didn't have stickers or anything. They were like embossed with the emblems and everything like that. So production is top-notch on this game.
But I'm going to tell you this, Marty.
Tell me.
Professor Evil, if it had come down to it, I would have kneecapped him with a lead pipe. I would have strung him up with a rope. I would have shot him with a revolver, or I would have hit him over the top of the head with a freaking candlestick at the end of this game. I was ready to take him out.
Yeah, he's very frustrating, but that's good, right? When you play a co-op, you don't want one that's so easy. Yeah. And we didn't really come close to winning our first game. I think did we have 2 or 3 treasures by the time he got his 4th? I can't remember.
We had 2. He had 3 when we had 1. It was like, well, let's reset this.
Yeah, and that was our first game. You play more, you get, it becomes easier, but don't be intimidated. You play your first game, if you get totally destroyed, don't get frustrated. You're just kind of learning the mechanics of the game and learning how to work together. Also, the player powers that you pick at the beginning of the game are very important. You want to find 3 or 4, how many ever players are playing together. You want to make sure that they synergize together, because because they are all unique. And as you play them, you're going to learn what their abilities are. Like Tony said, there's only 12 cards, and each time you're looking at 2, so you cycle through your abilities pretty quick. And you know what kind of cards is coming. It's like, I know I've got this really cool ability coming up that's going to possibly help me out. So again, with the co-ops, multiple plays, it does get easier, but I don't ever think it gets too easy. But the nice thing is, if you feel like this game is really easy, they have advanced rules in the game to make it more difficult and easier for the professor to get the loot before you can get to it, which is always good in a co-op game.
Yeah, screw that. Don't ever see that happening. I'm sorry. So for me, I will definitely squirrel this game away and keep it on the shelves. I think it's a keeper for me and our casual game group. I'll enjoy playing this with you and even our hardcore gamers, Marty, because I think even though they got frustrated, I think if we broke that out, they were like, I could see them saying, okay, we will beat this game.
Yeah, and a myriad of co-op games. It's one of those things that where I think theme makes a difference. I think mechanics make a difference. There are a lot of co-op games out there right now that kind of have that same feel of you're on the board playing against the game. But so if it's something that you're interested in, I definitely recommend checking out. I know at Gen Con, people just loved the game. They loved demoing it. We've heard great things about it. They sold out. This is Professor Evil in the Citadel of Time from Passport Games. It's one of their big games of the year. Sounds something like you may be interested in? Go check it out today.
5-minute initiative begins in 3, 2, 1.
Since Origins, one of my most highly anticipated games coming out at Gen Con was Codenames Duet. Now hold on, everybody. I know before you're like, oh, another Codenames. This is not like Codenames Pictures or Codenames Marvel or Codenames Disney, where it's just the same game with different pictures. This is a totally different game where you are working together with someone else. This isn't like a PvP. This is a 100% co-op game where you're trying to guess a 5x5 grid of words that's on the table. Mechanically, it's the exact same way. You give a word and a number, and the person that you're working with tries to guess which words you are referring to. But in this game, you only have 9 shots in a normal game to try to get all the words on your card, and they get all the words on their card because you're working with 2 different sets of numbers. Each of you are trying to find a certain number of words. It just so happens that 3 of them overlay each other, and there's 3 assassins, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But Tony, you've probably found out this game is not like a party game like Codenames. This is a really thinky little game.
I've always enjoyed Codenames. I've always enjoyed being the giver because I like the challenge of trying to associate all the words the best way I can. And when I saw Duet, and you and I got to play Duet, I really, really enjoyed doing this. Matter of fact, I think I enjoy this more than the party aspect of it because of the 2-player aspect of it, where when you get in Codenames, you know, some people can be kind of pushed away off to the side. They don't get engaged in it. So I was really excited about this game, and I enjoyed playing. I mean, especially I liked it when you gave me a clue, and I pointed to something, you go, I didn't see that. And I love that aspect of Codenames. And with Duet, it's even better. When you're sitting there, you think you know this person. I mean, I played with you. I played with Donna. I think I know you too. You've been in my life the longest, but still, I didn't. I didn't know where you were going with that. So I really enjoyed Codenames Duet. Donna didn't. I'm like, why do you not like this?
What? She didn't like it? Why?
I don't. We won, but we were on the easy mode. But I think I need to get it to the table more. I'm not sure she's a big fan, but I am definitely going to keep bringing it out and convert her. Hey, I've converted her to a bunch of worker placement games. I can make this happen for Codename Duet. What'd Vanessa think?
She really enjoyed it. So we went out to eat last week at a little local place around here called McAllister's, and I took the game in with me, and we were done eating. I said, you want to try it? She said, yeah, sure. So we played one game. She said, that's pretty good. I said, would you try it again? She said, I'll play one more time. We played the second game. We lost the first one. Played the second game. We lost. She said, all right, we got to play again. We played the third game. We were playing in like 2 words of winning this game. It was her turn. She gave me a clue. I was torn. You're laughing. You know where this is going. I was torn between 2 words. And I said, I did not play it safe. I said, I think I'm going to go out on a limb. I know you. I pointed to a word. She said, that's the assassin. I don't want to play anymore. Put it away. Let's go.
And that's what I love about this. When it's just the two people, you're like, we were so close, and you get that connection of, I know you. That's why I think, especially for couples, this is a great game, a great addition of the Codenames, better than Codenames After Dark or Codenames Marvel, like you were saying. This is one that I think a lot of people will enjoy, especially for those two-player games. Donna enjoyed the Rose King from Cosmos. She will like this game. She must like this game because I'm not giving it up.
That's right. But what's so neat is, so what's different in here, those cards that tell you which are yours, they're double-sided. So your opponent can see, not your opponent, but the person that you're working with can see one and you can see the other side. What's interesting is both of you share one assassin. But there could be a word that's an assassin for you, but is a word that you're trying to get them to guess. So it's really tricky like that. But here's the thing. As these other editions come out, as the Marvel or the Disney comes out, there's no reason why you can't replace the words in this game with those cards.
Right.
So if you wanted to use those other cards, but just use the same cards for telling you which are your words, you can do that. So this has a lot of aspects outside of the game itself by using those additional cards from the other Codename games.
Yeah, you can mix and match, because really only in Codenames Duet is the big thing is the 5x5 grid and being the double-sided grid. So I agree with you. So I think that adds to the replayability. It's a no-brainer. Just come off the hip with whatever it's going to cost. Go to Amazon right now, order it up, go to FunAgain. It's one of those games that I think you have to have on your shelf.
5-minute initiative is complete.
According to my Kickstarter emails, the second printing of Gloomhaven is coming to its backers, and I've still got buyer's remorse, Marty.
Still? But it's such a good game. We've heard so many good things about it. Don't have buyer's remorse.
So to add to that buyer's remorse, I think I am going to go ahead for that game, and I'm going to get ready for it, and I am going to order from the Broken Token, the Gloomhaven organizer, because setup is a bear. I've already heard about it. I've already said, you got to have it ready to go. So based on that feedback and the investment I've already put into it, I might as well go ahead and get the organizer order, because by the time the Gloomhaven gets here, if I have that organizer put together, it'll save some of the frustration. So yeah, I'm going to do it. Gloomhaven organizer from the Broken Token. If you're getting that second printing, or if you already have the first printing and you're like, man, this thing is, I just wish I had some way to organize it, go check it out at thebrokentoken.com.
Every so often, many times, there is a large game that comes out that just goes beyond the scale of what Tony and I can talk about, which is why we introduced a few episodes, that we call the Scurry Report. This is where we bring on a couple guys, Mark and Nate, who are probably just a lot smarter than what Tony and I are, to discuss some of these more in-depth games. And the game that we want to talk about today is one that it's an experience that I don't even know how to put into words. So before we get started, let me welcome back to the show Nate Bivens.
Hello.
And Mark Kell.
Howdy, y'all.
Now, if you'll notice, Tony is not here because he's on vacation. And granted, he was here and there on other parts of this episode. But as I said, that was pre-recorded, and this is being recorded while he was gone, which is probably a good thing, guys, because we just sat through, a 6-hour session of playing the game Seventh Continent from Serious Pulp. Now, this is a game that has just been delivered to Kickstarters. This was on a Kickstarter 2 years ago in September, October of 2015, and it's just now getting into the hands of the backers. And this is one serious beast of a game. It was very successful, had 1.2 million pounds, and that may have been the weight of the box.
Yeah, how many tons is that?
Yeah, it is a lot, and there is a lot going on in this box. And I was trying to put into words, what type of game is this? Is it even a category?
Well, I would call it a dungeon crawl, even though, we haven't seen a dungeon yet, but That's the feel I get from it.
I thought about the dungeon crawl, but to me, dungeon crawl doesn't explain the scope that this game has. When I think dungeon crawl, I think Zombicide or something along that nature. One that's, hey, we can get in there, we can play, and we're done. Just to me, the scale and scope of this game deserves more than the dungeon crawl. I'm using air quotes. Nobody can see that, but you guys.
Good radio.
Yeah.
What about textploration? Because you're exploring and you pretty much read a lot of text. That's kind of what you do in this game.
I'll tell you what I really think, because I was thinking about this the other day and I almost forgot about it. But it's like if you took Tales of the Arabian Nights and you put an actual game into it. Because that's the same thing. Tales of the Arabian Nights tells that story.
Yes.
And this kind of does the same thing. You have to go from one thing to the other. So that, I don't know, that's kind of where it leads me. Or create your own adventure. When I was younger, I had the create your own adventure books, and you would go in there and you had to make a choice, whether you make choice A or choice B. And you could go back through the book after you finished it, and you could make the other choices, and I always would make sure I did it the other way just to see how it turned out. And it always had a different ending.
We haven't even said really what this game is all about. I mean, it's a huge exploration game. I guess if there was Ameritrash and Eurogame, it's an Ameritrash game. It's a very thematic game, really based on luck.
Yep.
A luck mechanic. So we can throw out the kind of Euro mechanics.
Not a single wooden cube.
No, exactly. Now, that's a very interesting component of this game, because this game is really nothing but cards.
There's a couple of cardboard bits just to save the game and divide it up, but the rest of it's cards.
There are little miniatures that came in the Kickstarter for representing your character. So as you move around the map, you have that, but otherwise it's all cards.
Yeah, but I think saying it's nothing but cards, I mean, they pack so much stuff into this card game that it's even hard to think about, well, it's just a card. I don't think it's doing it justice saying it's just a card game. I mean, it's a phenomenal card game.
What they do with just cards is mind-blowing.
Yes, exactly.
Because they create these worlds and these maps with cards, and they're decent sized cards. They're square. I'm looking at them right now. They're square. They're what, 2 inches, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, something like that. And
3.5 by 3.5.
Is that what it is?
No, it's just a guess.
I got a measuring tape over there.
Sounded
Actually,
like I knew what it was.
Yeah. And all the cards are the exact same shape. Some of them are maps, and the others mainly are basically action cards. And there's this mechanic in this game that is just amazing. What they do with it. This game is built on one thing. On your turn, you're going to basically do one thing. You're going to make skill checks. You're going to select an action and make some sort of skill check. And that is handled through this action deck that you have. But the action deck also contains the cards that you actually take into your hand that you can use over the course of the game. But the action deck is also your life. It's all rolled into one.
Yeah, that's pretty neat how they made the deck that you draw from is also your timer for the game. When you get to the end of that deck, you've got like one more chance, and then if you don't get it, your game's over. You have to start over.
Yeah, and your character specific skills are in there. The items that you craft and combine together are in that deck. So yeah, it definitely packs a lot of punch.
And the other thing is, you didn't necessarily mention it, but when you get hurt in the game, what that does, that mechanic that they use for that, is it makes you burn cards quicker. So the more hurt you get, instead of putting some kind of cumbersome, you can't move, you can't do this, you can't do that, it just burns cards. It just burns through that deck quicker. And I thought that was a really nice mechanic that they kind of rolled that into doing the same thing over and over, and it makes it easier to learn the game.
But it's funny, starting the game out, you want to burn some of that deck because you've got to get cards in your hand. And maybe we should explain how this whole check thing works. And I'm just going to take a simple example. You may be on a little map card, and there's an icon there that has like a shovel, and it says you can dig here. And there's a couple numbers beside of it. One is the minimum number of cards that you can draw. And next is the number of successes that you have in order to do this skill check. So let's say, for example, it was a 1-2, which means you can draw a minimum of one card, and you're trying to get successes. Now, every card on there will have on the left-hand side maybe a full star or a half star or a couple stars or no stars. And you flip over the number of cards you decide. Let's say I'm going to dig and I need to have 2 successes, and I'm going to say I'm going to do 4 cards. So I deal 4 cards off the action deck, and hopefully I'll get 2 full stars out of that whole thing. At that point, whoever was involved in that activity can take one of those cards and put it into their hand. So that's how you get abilities and crafts and items, but the other 3 go into the discard. So yes, you do get to take something into your hand, but you did just put extra cards in the discard that you might need later on down the road.
And the other thing that comprises this action deck are curse cards. So when you start the game, you have to shuffle in a number of curse cards into the game. And to begin with, they're really just blank for these skill checks. Later, they determine whether you win or lose the game.
And the curse cards are basically the story that you're playing. At the beginning of the game, you're going to pick one story to play, and the first story in Seventh Continent is the Voracious God. Did I say it wrong?
I think it's the Voracious Goddess.
The Voracious Goddess, which is even better. Yeah, so you take, it's like a main story card type thing, and then 4 other curse cards that are just interjected throughout the deck. And the first time you go through the action deck, no big deal. Basically, those are just misses at that point. So if you're going to do a skill check, you turn over a curse card, that's basically 0 success. But if you go through the entire action deck, then all the thing that you're left with is your discard pile. At that point, whenever you have to do checks, you draw from that discard pile. And if you ever draw a curse, the game's over. If you don't, you take all the cards you just drew, you can keep one, but then you have to shuffle all the discard pile back together and you draw from that. So every time there's a 1 in however many chance that you may draw a curse, and those odds will pretty much stay the same unless you can add additional cards through crafting or getting additional skills.
Yeah, and what I found was that really adds tension. The first time we played, the very first time we pulled from the discard pile, we hit a skull and lost. Mm-hmm. And so that really keeps the tension high whenever you get down to that discard pile. You really should aim not to pull from the discard pile ever.
And there are mechanics in the course of the game to pull cards out of the discard pile and put them back in the action deck. In the game that we played today, and gosh, we played like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Whew, I'm kind of fatigued. And we didn't finish. And it's one of those things that we got to be careful what we say, because this is very much this could be very spoilery. So we're trying to make sure we don't give away stories or anything like that. Just kind of give an overview of the game. But one of the things that I could do is basically you can hunt animals, and you can make bonfires, and you can take an action to eat. And what eating does is basically takes cards out of the discard pile and puts them back into the action deck. So it's kind of like refilling your health.
That was one of the things I mentioned earlier too, was that I like that about the game, because it's, you're out on this continent, you're exploring, but you have to eat. The explorers have to have sustenance. They have to go and find it. And then, but that works into that same mechanic, right? It's not fiddly. It's not hard to grasp. You just take the cards and you put them back in that draw deck. And that was really nice.
So we've talked about basically kind of what this game is and how it works. Now let's just give our thoughts on the game. We have put in about 10 hours. We've played a couple sessions, about 10 hours into it. And I told the guys before we started, this is not a review. After 10 hours, you think we could do like an official review, but we haven't seen enough of the game to be able to do that.
Yeah, before I review a game, I have to win it first. And we haven't won one yet.
But it's one of those things, and this is where people have been wondering, what happens if you die? Well, you reset the whole thing and go again. And that has a kind of a time stories feel to it. So if you're not a big fan of time stories where you have to kind of reset and go through it again, you may have some reservations on this one, because that's kind of what it is. Now, I will say this, that as you explore, this is really cool too. You start out basically all your guys on a tile, and there's a fog of war cards or that are set up around that map. Yeah, and what happens is when you say you want to explore, say to the north, you flip over this random card that gives you some sort of encounter. And once you resolve that encounter, it could be a check. It's usually something bad that you kind of got to deal with. Then you get to see the next part of the map. Now, if you start over again, the map won't change, but those encounters will change. So it will have a different feel.
Yeah, that was something I was really interested to see. We replayed. We lost the first time we played. We restarted over from scratch, and we didn't really encounter any of the same encounters. And so I was interested in the replayability of those. I didn't feel like of the random encounters that had sameness or was boring at any point.
It was not. And it's one of those things, I guess, like in time stories too, you kind of learn what you got to do. Again, without giving anything away, we kind of realized, okay, next time we play this game, we need to do A, B, and C. And we did A, B, and C, and we got a lot further into the game, which brings up another really good point. We played for 6 hours. We're not done, but yet we've put up the game. How does that work? The game actually comes with a save state. There's a mechanic built into the game, and I thought this was really cool, where it explains to you how to save the cards. You save the action deck that you have. You save the discards. You save the items that you have. And basically, you can come back to where you were. You start out on the map tile that you were on, get your item cards back, reset the action discard piles, and you're off and running again.
It's a great system because it allows you to play this beast of a game, kind of casually in your home or with your gamer friends. And if something comes up or if you're running long on time, you can save and play it again later.
Yeah, the save system, it's really neat.
That's for you, Tony. Everything in this game is kind of driven by, like what you said, Mark. It's almost like a choose your own adventure. I'm going to go to the north. Okay, well then reveal tile 132. And then you reveal file 132 and it says, okay, set up these tiles around this. Or make this check. If you fail, take card X. If you fail, take card Y, and you never know what's gonna happen to you until you dig through that stack, and everything's set up in numerical order. They have this really nice mechanic of having these little dividers every 50 cards, so you can easily find the cards. And there were 400 or 500 cards that you kind of have to rifle through to find what you need. But it could be something that's good for you or bad for you, or an item. It could be anything. So that was really neat too. See, there it is. How you just never, it's like, okay, go get item 125. And after a while you go, is this going to be good? Is it going to be bad? So that was kind of neat. Oh, dang it, Tony.
I will say that is one of my minor gripes with the game is at first I really enjoyed this choose your own adventure style and not knowing kind of what was going to happen. It's like, hey, do you want to, drink this bottle of rum or something? And you don't know what happens, whether that's good or bad. But after a little while, it's sort of like you continue to make decisions and you don't have any information to base those decisions on. It's sort of like door number 1 or door number 2 every time.
Right.
And that can get a little tiring sometimes.
Sometimes there would be red herrings. You'd kind of go do a check or something, and it was like, it's nothing that was really beneficial. Or sometimes, and we found this out after our first game, we totally missed something that was very important. And because we didn't have it, we actually ended up losing because we didn't have it.
Right, that's true, and that is another thing about the game, and it's about how we played our first game and how we played the second game. Is our first game, we pretty much spent the whole game exploring every single thing on the tile. We didn't want to miss anything. We wanted to find all the things, and it was really cool to find all the things. The second time, we really kind of streamlined through the whole scenario. Well, we didn't get through the whole scenario, but what we didn't spend a lot of time exploring extraneous stuff, especially toward the last couple of hours. We were just like, let's see if we can go find what we want to. And I think that's a tribute to the game because you could do it either way. You could spend, all these hours exploring everything along the way, or you can just try to get to your destination and complete that quest.
I've heard some people compare this to a game like Skyrim, some sort of open world thing where it's like, there's a main quest, but if you want, you can go and explore whatever you want.
Well, I think that is true. And actually, I wasn't really leaning toward that sandbox theory in the game. But Nate actually, made a couple good points about it in that, the way we kind of went a different way just because we could. I mean, nothing that kept us from going that way, but we kind of went a roundabout way to get where we were going. So I guess it does kind of give that sandbox feel.
And as we played the game, we had this big sprawling map out on the table that you're constantly revealing cards and you have you're building out this continent. And so after a while, you start to see there's like desert zones and mountain zones and jungle zones. And you said we kind of streamlined to the last part. We happen to have this somewhat, the first clue is like somewhat of a map. And we kind of knew it's like, I think what we're looking for is maybe in this area. So that's why we kind of made a beeline to there, skipping a lot of the stuff along the way, just praying that there wasn't nothing that we skipped that we might need later on.
Yeah, and that's one thing I have to comment on is the artwork on the cards. Whenever you're laying out this map with these cards, the artwork makes sense from card to card. It creates kind of this mosaic of the seventh continent, and it's just stunning on the table. It looks amazing.
I told you there was like over 500-600 cards. I can't imagine the designers trying to lay these things out and make sure everything points to every card correctly in the story and everything. The designers are, oh geez, I'm going to mess this up. Ludovic Rowdy and Bruno Sauter. Those guys must have went through tons of Post-it notes, like posting on the board. It's like, okay, this is going to be tile such and such. That'll point to this tile such and such, and this tile needs to have this map drawn on it. This one needs to have this drawn on it.
Well, that when we were playing the first time, I told Nate I just envisioned people on a cork board, you know, with yarn and string and the pegs, and they've got everything kind of, this goes here and this goes there and this goes there, like you see on the CSI shows.
Yeah. The organization design it had to take to put this game together is just incredible. It's just a feat that I can't believe a couple guys, were able just on themselves to do. And I heard it took them like a few years to do. And I could see it probably took them a couple years to get everything right.
Yeah, the other really impressive thing is the writing. A lot of games that I see these days, the writing is subpar or feels rushed or kind of cheap. This has a ton of writing in it, and it actually is pretty immersive. It's very descriptive. The language is great in it. I mean, it's probably some of the best board game writing that I've seen.
All the flavor text we read. Every time we pulled a card, sometimes on the back there was some flavor text, and we read every one because it was somewhat important. And sometimes it was a clue, because you'd read the flavor text and we'd go, oh, crap. And you would turn over and see, yep, that's something bad. So it was immersive. We did talk before we recorded about when we first started the game, we were kind of into the story, but we lost some of the plot points along the way. It's like we were exploring, but we weren't finding out a lot of the plot points of the curse that we were working on.
Yeah, I think part of it is based on our choices. We kind of went off the path, and to get back to the path, it was just going through these random encounters. And I kind of compared it to like playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the DM is just rolling on the random encounter table over and over. And the first bit, that's fun, it's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. But, a couple hours of that into random encounter after random encounter, we definitely were getting a little fatigued, and it was clear we were all ready to get back to that plot.
And speaking of fatigue, I know I, for the one, was kind of about ready to hit the save point before you guys were. And it was because there's a lot of discussion. It's not just move. Every time you do a check, all of us look at all the cards that come out. Nate, does it help you any? No, I don't need it. Mark, do you need this card? Well, I might need to keep that one. Or Marty, maybe it's better. Every time we had cards to choose from, we had a discussion about it. And that's what really draws the game out, because you want to be as efficient as possible, because you got limited number of cards in your hand and limited number of items that you can craft, which is another cool feature too, is being able to craft items that that have the durability that actually go away after a certain amount of use.
And you also have to discuss who's actually going along on it. I mean, because that's a very important part of it. A lot of times we're like, well, we don't want to send Marty because he's in this state right now, or
poisoned.
Well, I wasn't going to
overly poisoned, way poisoned,
and then poisoned again. So yeah, we wouldn't send him, or we'd be like, yeah, Nate needs to go because he's got this thing that will really help when we get over there, probably. And so yeah, it does take a lot of discussion, but it was enjoyable.
As I was fatigued as I was, and I'm like, I'm kind of ready to stop. We kind of got to a good stopping point, and we all decided, this is a point in the game. It's like it really makes sense thematically, which is kind of nice too. This will hit our save point here, and then we'll pick this up. But after we started talking, about 30 minutes later, I told these guys, I'm kind of itching to see where this now goes from this really kind of cool spot that we just found.
Yeah, and I felt that way the first time too. I mentioned, we played for maybe 3 or 4 hours the first one before we died and lost. And when I got home, I went straight to eBay and was like, okay, how much is it to pick one of these up? Because I really want to play like tomorrow.
And what's neat is, oh my gosh, I said it again.
What was that, Tommy?
Oh, geez. The original Kickstarter came with 3 expansions, which comes with some additional cards, terrain cards, plus 3 brand new curses or adventures. And the fact that we hadn't even finished the first one tells me that there are tens and tens of hours in this game that can be spent trying to get through the whole thing.
That will bring to light my only concern about it is that I am a little concerned about it getting samey after you play through, because it looks like all the curses that are in the base box use that same map. And I'm just concerned a little bit about how it's going to be, once you've played through all the map, you've seen all the map tiles, I know going through the action deck, we've already kind of gotten to the point where we're like, this card, yeah, we don't want that. We don't want that, because we've already seen it 3 times. So we've already turned it down 3 times. So we know that we don't want it, so that's just a little concerning for me.
Yeah, and I was going to say, even those random encounters, as cool as they are, it might be, oh, there's a blowfish, and do you want to, eat it, or do you want to put it back in the water? And you don't know the outcome of that cool encounter. We played 10 hours. If we have 30 more hours in the box, that's 40 hours of these, largely random encounters. Is that still fun 30 hours later?
Right. And everything works the exact same way. It's always that types of checks.
But I will say the fact that we're talking about a game for 10 or 30 hours of gameplay, if it's not fun in the 30th hour, I can still probably say I've got my money's worth. I mean, that's ridiculous value.
That's a good point.
And it also leads itself back to the sandbox theory, right? Like if you're playing Red Dead Redemption and you go off on a path that's not the path of the game, you can do that for 10, 15, 20 hours. So eventually you have to get back on that path. Part of what we did tonight was we kind of went off on the wrong path. If we had stayed on the same path, it probably wouldn't have taken as long, and we wouldn't have seen a bunch of the cards over and over and over and over.
So here's the question, guys. We're kind of getting to the end of the Scurry Report segment. So we are at a point in this current quest, and we don't have any clue how much is left. We could be almost at the end, or we could be only 2/3 of the way through. We kind of know the situation we're in with our discard and action deck. We're kind of on our last leg. If we die, do you guys want to reset this up and do it again?
Not the whole thing. No.
So you would maybe want to house rule it and maybe start at a certain point?
I would certainly do that. Like, especially the very first part of the game, not to give anything away, but the very first part of the game, I don't want to do that again. We've done it twice, but I would have no problem with saying, we're at this point and we can restart here and going from there and doing it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I would either play a different curse and try to explore some of those other stories, or like you're saying, house rule it and start, where we died, for example. I would not start it over from scratch again with this curse.
And it's interesting because when I read the very first curse is also the longest curse, because it's introducing you to all the types of mechanics. It's introducing you to the continent, so you can kind of see what the map looks like. And they said after that, actually the rest of the curses are a lot shorter. Because I was asking, I said, well, if the first one's so long, should I start with a second one? They went, no. You need to play the first one to make sure, number one, you understand the mechanics. 2, so you can see a lot of this map. Because we did get to see a lot of the continent as we played this particular curse.
Yeah, and especially with casual gamers, I mean, this is a perfect game to introduce like to my wife who doesn't like to play games, because it's full of story and it's cooperative, and it is more about exploration than a lot of other themes that games have. But knowing that the first adventure is 10 hours, maybe let's say 6 hours to be conservative and optimistic. She's not going to play a 6-hour game. And so this game is inaccessible to her, even though it's fairly rules light and easy to learn.
And again, everyone, this is somewhat our first impressions after 2 playthroughs of the same curse, 10 hours in, and we haven't completed it. So, no, this is not a complete review. You are just hearing what we feel right now. But I do hear all of us saying that, you know what? If from the save point, we do want to kind of get it back to the table, kind of see, because we've kind of gotten to an area we haven't seen yet. So we want to see what's in there. How is this story going to end up? And if we have to, and if we die and start over, well, then maybe we kind of reset from that save point again and try it again.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I can't wait to get back into it. It's just not tonight.
Yeah. After, let's see, we've also ate a lot of barbecue today and a lot of pizza.
Some beer.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's the thing is, if you're interested in this game, they're actually getting ready to put it back on Kickstarter again. This is going to be coming out on September 26th. So Serious Pulp is getting ready to put their second release of this game, and there's going to be some additional stuff that's not in this first game. So if you missed it the first time around, and if you have interest in this game, by all means, there are a lot of people that are talking and covering this game right now. Go get their thoughts on it. See what they think. See if they have the same thoughts that we do. Go out there and listen to other people who have maybe play through every single quest. Maybe they have put 80 hours into it, and see what their thoughts are. This is just our thoughts from right here coming into it. This is, it's funny. Any other game after 10, 12 hours of play, I'd say, okay, I'm ready to talk about this and give this a full thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever. But I'm still like, I need to dig more into this one.
Well, if it's any testament to it, I'll definitely be checking out the Kickstarter to see, what the pricing is and everything on it, and giving it some serious consideration to getting the game for myself.
And for me, my only reservation with the second Kickstarter is that I don't want to wait for it to fulfill again. I'm sure fulfillment would be much quicker this time since it's already been printed. So that's why I'm looking at the eBay route, even though I don't know if my wife will like that.
Well, the nice thing is hopefully on September 26th, when it posts, they'll have when the expected delivery date is.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, they've told me that fulfillment will not take nearly as long because it's pretty much already printed.
Yeah, if it's longer than a week, though, that's too long for me right now, because I definitely want to play it again, try to get my wife into it. So
cool. All right. So again, everybody, that's Serious Pulp. That Seventh Continent is, to be honest with you, is probably one of the most innovative games I've played in a very long time. Again, because this is just a card-driven game with only there's only one action. There's only one thing that you do, and it's a skill check. Another thing, I didn't mention this too before we wrap up. Another thing that was kind of throwing me off too, there's no player turns or limited number of actions. You do whatever you want to do. Mark, you could sit there and go 50 times in a row if you want, and then we don't go. That's good, but it's also somewhat bad too, because if you're not careful, somebody could get bored. It's like, well, I kind of want to draw a card. I kind of want to do something.
Yeah, just on that, there were a couple times to where y'all kind of just let me keep going, and I didn't want you to get bored. And I've been, are you sure? Are you sure you want me to keep going? Like, yeah, y'all just keep going.
It's because we wanted you to step on the poison sea urchins and we'll let you get bit and stuff.
Instead of Marty.
Yeah, exactly, because I don't need that happen anymore. So again, this is Seventh Continent coming out again soon. And guys, we'll get this back to the table and see if we can get through that first curse.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Yep, sounds like a plan.
One of the games that I got to play at Origins that I was so excited about was a game that's coming out from Games Workshop, and it's called Warhammer Underworld's Shadespire. I think most people just call it Shadespire. This is a miniatures game from Games Workshop that's kind of a way to bridge the gap between board games and miniatures games by providing this little skirmish miniature game that's played on a board that can be played in just a matter of 30 minutes. To help me talk about this, I have my son, Travis, that's going to join me. Now, Travis has been on before. I view Travis as mainly like an RPGer and a miniature gamer, whereas I'm more of the traditional board gamer. So I want to see, as a person who's really into miniature games, how does this fly for him? Is this a game that he would be interested in? Likewise, as a board gamer, is this something that I would be interested in? So, Travis, thanks for coming back on, man.
Thanks for having me back on, Marty.
You're welcome. So, we got this game. We've been checking it out. Now, let me just say, right off the bat, this is a Games Workshop game. As always, the production is top-notch.
Definitely. Phenomenal. They even decided to put details onto the base. I don't think I've seen that before, where the bases they actually give you in the box have, rocks, skulls, cracks on them. I've never seen that.
And in fact, let's just talk about the miniatures real quick. Board gamers are going to be, oh no, miniatures, got to put them together, got to paint them, I'm out. Would you believe that these things are pushed to fit? I was putting these together the other night. They're pushed to fit, and they will actually stay together. I was putting a little dab of glue here and there just to make sure, but I didn't really need it. So each of these miniatures maybe are only 2 or 3 parts. They have great rules on how to put them together, and I had these models, and I think there were 7 total, together in a matter of 30 minutes.
Yeah, 7, 8 models, 30 minutes, way faster than any other miniature game out there.
Yeah, well, especially the typical, like we got Dark Imperium, and that's, all these sprues and all these little bits and everything has to be glued. Even though they're still easy to put together, it's not the push to fit like we have here.
It was still more pieces per model, and then like more things you have to deal with. This was just like super straightforward, 2 sprues total, 8 figures, like you said. Push to fit, super easy.
But they
did not sacrifice detail.
There's the word sacrifice. No, the detail is just immaculate as always. So if you have no interest in gluing, no interest in painting, you don't have to, because the starter set comes with 2 armies. Each one are color coded. So there's a red and there's a blue. So it's easy to tell what's on the board. If you're into painting, you for sure can, but you don't have to. So the card stock's great. The boards are great. Nice tokens, nice miniatures, top production. But let's talk about the game itself. This game is presented as a game with very few models on the board that will play over the course of 30 minutes. It's your typical skirmish type game.
It is. And one thing I like about it is that not only are there less models to keep up with, so you don't have to like have 8 or 9 different models that you have a bunch of different wound trackers on, and then not even that, but like single wound units, and then you just got to keep pulling them off the board. No, it's still right now a total of 8 models on the board. You can easily tell that's the enemy, these are mine. And not only that, but the board itself is super manageable.
And it comes with 2 game boards, and they're both like rectangles, and they're double-sided. And this is actually part of the game because when you come into play, you bring as many board tiles as you want. Now, right now, there's only 2. But the idea is there's a roll-off at the beginning, and somebody will get to place their board first, either side. The opponent will get to place theirs, but it hasn't got to be lined up exactly. And I thought this was kind of interesting. The board is made up of hexes. The only rule is that you got to at least match up at least one hex or some hexes with the existing board. So they don't have to be flush. They can be off-centered, creating some very interesting board layouts where you had like this. You could have this narrow, thin pinch point right in the middle of the board.
Yeah, that's definitely something different. Like the actual board layout, like in 40K, the only difference would be if you had like terrain or something. And again, this is just something else that Shadespire is much more manageable. Each time you play the game, it could be something different with different like layouts of objectives and tiles.
You had mentioned the objectives, which is another important part of the game. For just 2 players, there's going to be 5 objectives. And this is kind of interesting too. You take the objectives face down and shuffle them. They're numbered 1 through 5. And then one at a time, each of you place the objectives anywhere out on the board. And at that point, you flip over the objectives so you have no idea where they're going to be. And this is very important because a main part of this game is managing 2 decks that you're going to have. One's a power deck, one's an objective deck. This objective deck consists of 12 cards that you bring in, build, and it could be like hold objective number 1. Until the end of the phase, or do you have objective 2 at the end of the phase, etc. So you don't know what the other person's trying to do, and you don't know where the objective is going to be right when the game starts, which is very much a major part of the game. Granted, the game has that very miniatures feel of, hey, I'm going to go up against you, we're going to roll some dice, whoever has the higher is actually, the attacker wins, going to deal damage. But I think the overall big strategy part of the game are those decks.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things is that since it's like a deck, it's random. Your objectives are random. Where they are on the board is random. And you don't know what the other person is trying to do. Usually in a miniature game, there is one objective for the whole game, and that's what both of you are trying to do. There's no changing that out. There's no secrets. It's just, usually King of the Hill, assassination, those are the usual kinds. Well, in this one, it's everything. And you can even swap them out. So if you did get lucky and you have objectives near you and you have the objective stand on the one near you, that's good.
Because the main point of the game is actually getting these glory points. And these glory points are typically obtained through meeting your objectives. So the course of the game takes over 3 rounds. And in each round, there's an action phase and an end phase. So the major part of the game is the action phase. And during the action phase, each of us can take 4 activations, which can be one of several things. You can activate a unit and move it. You can activate a unit and attack somebody else. You can do a charge where you can move and attack, but then he can't do anything the rest of that round. You can draw new objective cards. Like you mentioned, let's say one of the cards in your hand is objective for objective that's way on the other side of the board, and you think, I'm never going to get there. So one thing you could do is try to go through your objective deck to try to find the one that's closest to you and try to score that quickly. So you have all these options that you can do during your turn, but there's only 4. And one thing I like about this different from like 40K, it's alternate activations. You go, I go, back and forth until 4 of them are done.
Definitely in 40K, especially if you're playing a super infantry heavy army, there is a lot of downtime. And this, like the max you could probably do in one turn is move and attack. And that in itself can take less than 2 minutes. So with just the constant back and forth, you're able to just keep both players engaged, and that'll definitely be something that can bring people into miniature games who are usually just into board games.
And after each activation is when you could use this other deck. There's this power deck that you have, and there's two types of cards. There's like an upgrade card, employee cards. Upgrades can be used in order to basically add attachments to your existing units, give them additional abilities, give them additional weapons. There's also ploy cards, which are like an instant, like in Magic, the old instant card. It's like, I'm going to do this. It's a temporary thing, and then it goes out of play. One thing I do like about those upgrade cards is that you must have glory points in order to use them. Again, you can score glory points by either completing objectives, or if you kill off another person's unit, you get one. But to put an upgrade into play, you just take one of your glory points, flip it over, and then you could put that into play. Now, you don't lose that glory point. It's just there that to indicate that, you've already used it and you can't be used again for another upgrade. So again, even though you just moved, I can still play those power cards at the end of my turn. So very little downtime. And in fact, this whole game is supposed to take place in 30 minutes. And once you know this game, this is easily played in 30 minutes.
Easily. Another thing with the decks, it's pretty comparable to the new stratagems that they're putting into 40K 8th edition. And I just feel like, again, it's another way to bridge the people who don't play miniature games to the people who do play miniature games.
Also, I think the rule book was pretty easy to follow. It's very well laid out. I think the only thing that I had to kind of keep referencing to is actually the combat sequence. Even though it's pretty much, there's some attack dice and there's some defense dice.
Yeah, definitely not as much as like 40K's weapon skill, ballistic skill, and then when you take the damage, there's the toughness, and then there's also you got to make sure your morale. Don't forget the leadership. But then there's your saves that you can get.
Yeah, there's a lot. The only thing that we had to keep looking at was there's these icons on the die that we had to kind of keep. Okay, well, what is this icon for? For example, on the defense die, my guys were looking for shield icons. Your guys were looking for.
It was kind of like a curvy arrow, meant like getting out of the way, dodging.
Like a dodging thing. But then there's also these other icons on there that indicate support. So if it just so happens that there's a guy standing beside you while you're being attacked, you can get support from that guy to where that additional item on the die will help with the defense. Likewise, on the attack die, that same emblem is also there so that if one of your guys is standing beside a guy that you're attacking, it makes it easier to hit them too. So there is support that comes into play. It's very tactical in that case. And then we had to make sure we understood how the successes worked out. Resolving successes. The only thing that both of us were like, that was kind of weird was there's this one situation where you rolled 3 attack die.
I rolled 3 attack dice and I had 3 successes.
Three successes by showing the axe which you needed.
I had 2 axes and then I held 1 for the aid, which did work.
Yes. And then as a defense, I rolled the 1 and got what's called the critical success icon. And the rules state if you have more critical successes than the other person, even though you have more successes overall, that attack fails.
So essentially, even if you only have 1 die, you still have a 1 in 6 chance to completely win. I guess what they were going for is if you are totally outnumbered, you're not going to completely lose all the time. There's still a way for you to win, which looking at it from like that does make sense. But from just like a common sense standpoint, it's just kind of silly that 3 successes loses out to 1 exclamation point.
Yeah. But I think it's just like your last ditch effort. You know that you actually still have a very small chance of going in there and possibly winning. Now, this is a game that's not meant to be just this game comes out and that's pretty much it. This is the core set. The idea is that this game is going to be established, going to have, I don't know, want to call it a lifestyle game per se, but it's one of those that you'll be able to play as they introduce new war bands. And in the rule book, they have 3 additional war bands are talking about coming out with. Well, it comes with the Steelheart Champions and the Garrick Reavers, but there's also going to be coming out the Iron Skulls Boys, which is like the orcs, the Chosen Axes, which are the dwarves, the Sepulchral Guard, Undead, and I said there's actually 4, and Spikeclaw Swarm, which is the Skaven or the rats.
So another thing, manageability, which is something that this game does a great job of. Like, if you want to get into a miniature game, like, well, since we're talking about GW, let's talk about Warhammer. If you want to get into 40K and you're just like, you know what? Space Marines look pretty fun to play. Well, Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, like there's just so much, too much. It's like causes your brain to go into overload. This, you got 7 ones. You're going to play as just, dudes in armor, dudes with axes. It's just super simple, super manageable, a great way to get people in. There's just 7 distinct different factions, a great way to get into like something that would have a bigger selection.
I think we said 7. I think it's 6 right now at this point.
There are 2 right now, and there will be 4 more.
Which
that is the final
2
word.
plus 4 is 6. So anyway, and that's nothing we made the point of too. It's not like right now. If you were to play as the Steel Hearts champions,
Which are the humans, by the way.
Humans. There's only 3 models. And right now, they're not going to be introducing additional models to modify your warband. Once you know those 3, that's it. If you're playing against an opponent, you know exactly what they got. Then you want to wonder, what's the big deal? The strategy is how you build your objective deck and how you build your power deck, because they come with starter decks for each of those, but there's an additional pack of cards that you can modify each of those decks and totally change your overall strategy. That's where this game is going to succeed, is on the deck building mechanic.
Even then, even though it's not like the grand strategy and tactics that a big miniature game is, it still has things that'll like get you thinking in this direction. Like in this one, there was a objective where if all the enemies are dead, you gain like 5 glory points at the end phase. Well, it would make sense if you had more people to get that, because you have more people to kill the other person, especially if they have a lower number, such as the
number 1, the humans only had 3.
Humans only had 3. So when I got that objective at the beginning, I was like, I'll definitely keep this. I'm outnumbering him. It'll take longer for him to kill me than it will for me to kill him.
And just because all your guys lose doesn't mean you lose the game.
Right.
It comes down to glory points. At the very end of the game, you may have an objective like I did. You beat me. All my guys were gone, but at the end I had an objective that said, as long as there are no enemies in my territory, which there didn't happen to be, I scored 3 points.
Yeah, in fact, if it wasn't for that one gain 5 glory points card, even though I killed all of his, I would have lost.
That's right.
I think that's a good way for people to realize, like, again, manageability, getting into war games, realize that objectives are what's important. It might be fun to shoot the enemy, but when you have to stand over here, you should probably go stand over there and get those points instead of going for kills.
So Travis, as a miniature gamer, did this appeal to you at all? This is going to be one of those that's going to be supported in organized play. Games Workshop wants to make sure that there's a tournament support for this. Is this something, as a 40K guy, as a guy who just got his Death Guard Codex, as he's building out his 1,500 point list, does this appeal to you at all?
I do like the skirmish. I like it being on a smaller scale, but I think when it comes to like the dudes who play like the Apocalypse rules for 40K, I don't think they'd be interested, because if they're going into Apocalypse, they want large number of folks. They want 7+ hours of rolling dice. They want to crunch. They want to pull out their scientific calculators and see how many people die. But for me, I do like it. I like how manageable it is. I like how small it is. I like how distinct everything feels from like each other. I think it's good. I just don't think it will appeal to like the people who got into 40K for the massive armies. But for board gamers, for people just getting in, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect for them.
And it's coming from a board gamer. I 100% agree. The models are easy to make. It's played on the board. There are no rulers or anything like that. So measurements is very easy. There's not terrain you got to build. The terrain is almost, the map changes is how you lay out the boards at the beginning of the game. It's each of the factions will feel totally different. There is organized play in case you want to do that. You can do some pre-deck construction going in to make every game feel a little bit different. To me, as somebody who maybe want to dip your toe into miniatures games, I think this is a good step, and this is what this game is supposed to be. The only thing we don't know is what the MSRP is. I really, really hope Games Workshop comes out with an MSRP of like $50 or less, just to make the easy to get into. And I really hope the war bands are $30 or less.
Agreed, because probably the biggest barrier of entry for miniature games is the price point. Even like the start collecting boxes, that's like $75 a piece right there.
The start collecting for 40K.
The start collecting. And like it says, that's start collecting. And then you get a few infantry, maybe a vehicle here and there. It adds up. And with this, you just buy your army, buy maybe an expansion or 2 of the cards, just a fraction of the cost of what 40K or Age of Sigmar would be.
This comes out in October. I really enjoyed it when I got to play it at Origins. Playing it again, I just really enjoyed the back and forth combat. I haven't gotten to all the deck building yet, but that's going to be coming. I think this game could really do well on the tournament circuit. I really think it could do well for people that want to maybe get into miniatures games. Like Travis said, if you're already in a 40K and playing 2,000 or 5,000 point games, maybe this doesn't tickle, or Age of Sigmar. Let's put it in that universe.
Yeah,
we keep saying 40K because we play 40K, but this is the Age of Sigmar universe. If you're already playing that and it's like, I don't really want to deal with a small scale army, maybe this isn't for you, but for everybody else, I definitely think this is one that you should check out. This is Warhammer Underworlds Shadespire, coming from Games Workshop this October. We just finished and catching up a lot of this pre-recorded content. And Rich, I just got to ask you, what did you think of Professor Evil in this little time that Tony and I talked about?
I thought your talk was engaging and thorough and totally on the money.
I'm sorry, y'all. I just kind of threw him under the bus because like he hadn't heard this yet, Just
no, he neither has he heard your segment nor played the game. So
that's
really
right.
had very little to offer.
I don't even know what you're talking about. So, one of the things we're very excited about on the show is to help support our good friend Kevin Burkhartsmeyer, which may known as Berkey, as he's got a brand new Kickstarter that started actually today called GameToppers. Now, for anybody that went to Gen Con, what this is like a custom-made tabletop to go on top of your existing tables that gives the nice, full, rich look of a gaming table, complete with rails, and it has little inlays, and it has wooden rails, and it's very comfortable. It has cup holders and all this. He brought those to Gen Con to hand out to vendors to kind of let people get a chance to look at it and everything. Well, his Kickstarter started today, and it is killing it. His goal was $50,000. He's well over $100,000. These things look really good. And tell you, Rich, if you don't have a gaming table, you ought to go check out this Kickstarter because it's one of those things that you could just kind of throw on top of a table and you're good to go.
Marty, you've seen my table. It's a World Market original from about 12 years ago that you can pretty easily pick up with one hand and take out to, say, a parking garage to play Don't Mess with Cthulhu over cigars. I do not own a gaming table. I am always looking for a way to enhance this table. I did just kickstart those neoprene mats from, was it Giant Viking mats or something like that is perfectly cut to the size of the table. But I heard about Berkey's Kickstarter, and I have been waiting with bated breath for it to launch. I don't know yet what the price points are, but I'm definitely looking into, I don't know why I'm married to this table, but I am not giving it up. It still has 4 legs that all stand up. So I definitely want to look at one of these toppers to upgrade it.
They range anywhere from like $299 to up to like $800 and something. And that's different sizes. And that's also included different, like I said, they got cup holders and dice holders and so, and the different mats that you can put into it. So it's a lot of customability behind it, but there's a couple different sizes you can choose from and then add options to that. It is very well built. It does separate in 2 pieces. It comes in a bag. And like there's some of our friends like Jamie over the Secret Cabal and Chaz from Paradise and Joel Eddy from Drive Through Review all have these and use them in their videos and they're reviewing it and everything. So if anyone wants to go check those out, go check out those guys' YouTube channels and you can see exactly what this thing looks like. But it looks great, and I think it's going to be a big hit for him.
I'm in. I definitely want to check it out.
Yeah, because I must admit, as many memories as I had on that little table of yours, having a nice little topper thing would have been nice, because a couple times I probably knocked some dice off the table and everything. Hey, I will say this, that when I look back at 2017, one of the most memorable experiences. Now, I've been to Origins and I've been to Gen Con and I've done a lot of great things in gaming, but one of the top memorable experiences is sitting out at that table with you and Rodney and Dave, sitting in the parking lot playing Don't Mess with Cthulhu and having cigars.
That was a really good time. It was honestly one of the very few things I was going to miss about I used to have my board games in an actual office, in an office building. That was where we played that storied game. And it's one of my favorite memories of the year as well. I will say that now that I have a backyard, we could have cigars there too, if you want to come.
Yeah. Oh, I still want to come. And we could juggle out there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because come to find out, like all of us like juggle and like Rodney does videos with everybody that juggles and then posts them on his YouTube page. I think that must be just a thing he does. You know, it's funny, the one we got with you, Black in LA, that's good. Back in LA several months ago, that was the first time that you got to sit down and play The Godfather.
That's right.
The board game. So interesting story. I suck at teaching rules. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. This past week, I took Godfather to a game group, and I thought, yeah, I got this. I could teach this. I've played this multiple times. So I teach them all the rules to the Godfather. And this is the game from Eric Lang, this available from CMON, and it's core. It's a worker placement game with some area control. And the whole mechanic is when you place a worker, you're either shaking down what's called shaking down the front of the store or the back of the store. Basically, it's an action that you get to take. So we played this whole game. And people just had the best time in the world playing. Next day, friend of mine contacts me on Messenger and goes, can I ask you about this rule? Now, I am notorious for after we teach a game, people tend to go back and read the rule books after we're done to see if I messed up on anything. Have you only played it like that one time?
I think we played it a few times while you were here. I have not yet gotten a copy of it, so I really want to. I loved the game, but no, I only played it that one time.
Yeah, see, there's this thing about you take control of an area. Like I said, it's an area control game, and at the end of a round, whoever has the most of their little workers in an area gets a little token and they have control of it. There's a very important rule that says the next round, if anybody places one of their thugs in the store, that when they shake down the front of the business, whoever controls that area also gets to shake down the front of the business. I forgot that.
Oh, I remember that rule.
Yeah, thanks. So where were you that night? I really could have used some help. So we're playing this game, and at the very end, it was so funny. Somebody said, I mean, that was a really cool game. They said, but I don't really get the whole area control thing. I mean, yeah, sure, you get 5 points at the end, but I didn't see it was really that important. Well, duh, because I forgot one of the most important rules about the area control.
You ruined it.
I did. It's so funny. Even when we were done, they said, that was great. Let's play again sometime. It's like, wait till you play it the right way. It'd be funny if we played it and go, no, that sucks. Let's play it the other way.
It's a little like, I mean, if I'm Eric Lang, it's a little like if you hold up a picture that you drew with a crayon and you say, no, this is a Pablo Picasso. And then I go, wait a minute, but I'm Pablo Picasso and that's not one of my drawings. And you go, no, that's what a Pablo Picasso drawing looks like. And then everybody thinks Pablo Picasso is just kind of a guy that draws with crayons. That's what you've done to Eric's reputation, Marty.
Well, to be fair, I'm not an art connoisseur, and it's really kind of hard for me to tell between some crayon drawings and some Picasso, so maybe that wasn't the best example.
Well, that may be true. I am also not an art connoisseur, and I chose the wrong analogy. Okay, that's fair.
Hey, this has been a wonderful time hanging out with you, man. I need to kick Tony out of the country more often. I think he's out on some other side of the world. He's in Europe or something. I don't know what he's doing. But anyway, it was so much fun having you on. The one thing that sucks about this whole situation is like you, me, Rodney, we're sitting there talking a lot. We're like on the three most distinct ends of North America as you can get. Rodney's not even in the time zone that's in the United States.
Nope.
He's out in the ocean somewhere.
It's such a funny thing about this internet that we've figured out ways to stay in touch. It is both incredibly beneficial and helpful, and then also it makes the heart grow fonder because it's we get to be together so little. But I have very much enjoyed this. Thank you for having me. It is an honor. I wish I was going to see you again later this year. I'm going to be seeing Rodney at Shut Up and Sit Down in Vancouver in October, and then I'll be seeing none of you guys at Board Game Geek Convention down in Dallas in November. I'll be there all by my lonesome.
That stinks the timing worked out like that. They did say that next year that it will be on a different weekend. So hopefully, you know, if not this year, hopefully our paths can cross next time. So if you want to see Rich, you can go to Shut Up and Sit Down, their expo, and check him out there. Again, he'll be at BGG Con. He's like a mainstay there. And if you want to see a lot more of Rich, make sure to watch the first episode of Glow on Netflix.
Oh, Marty.
Why didn't you warn me? I
I loved the picture in my head of you seeing me in my altogether there for that first time, and I simply couldn't bring myself to rob you of that experience.
Oh my gosh. I'm sitting there watching, like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What is going on? It would be like me going over to Rodney's channel to watch, like, I don't know, learn how to play Lisboa. And I hit play and he's sitting there in the buff teaching me how to play. I just wasn't expecting it.
I think it is distinctly dissimilar from what it would be like if you went to watch his Lisboa video and he was completely naked. It would be amazing, don't get me wrong, but I think it's slightly different.
Is it? I don't know. Because it could be a stretch goal next year.
That's right. Hey, now we're getting somewhere.
We didn't get the Star Wars Rebellion video. Thanks, people. So maybe next year we throw in, Rodney does, no, I don't want that. I don't want that stretch goal.
No, I don't think you do.
We're just going to leave that one alone. Rich, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on the old Twitter once in a while at CardboardCast, and that's kind of it. That's really about where they can find me. I pop up once in a while on some TV shows here and there, but otherwise you can more regularly find me on Twitter.
Once again, thank you so much for coming on, and everybody, Tony will be back next episode for what was this, 128? So I guess that would be 129, 128 plus 1. Yep. Carry the 1. Yeah, that's it. And it'll be October. And October is a big month for me because I love Halloween. So I'm going to be doing some Halloween gaming. We got some scary movies lined up to play. I don't know. Maybe, Rich, you and I can actually figure out a possible way to play Arkham Horror LCG sometime or something like that.
We've got to do it.
It's such a good game. Such a good game. Again, thanks, everybody. And remember, keep rolling dice.
And taking names?
Yeah, that'll work. Thanks for listening. If you want to chat with us, you can do so on Twitter at Dyson Names, on our Facebook page, Roll Dice, Take Names, on our BGG Guild, 1589, or Instagram, Dyson Names. Record. See, now the clock is running.
Oh,
yeah, that's very important.
That's what it's supposed to look like.
That's what it's supposed to do. Holy crap. All right, let's try this again. Essen's right around the corner. I'm telling you right now that our buddies over at FunAgain Games are looking at those games at Essen, trying to decide what they want to bring back. And as always, they're going to have their little Essen pre-order, where if you're going to BGG Con, you can go and pick up those games. So go over to BGG, look at all those previews of the games that are coming out at Essen, head over to FunAgain Games. When they put up their list of those games that you're interested in, they'll get them, bring them back. You can pick them up here, have them shipped to you. It's a great service that hardly anybody else does in this country. Go check them out at funagain.com.